Well, hi and welcome to Practice Makes Parent, where we understand it's not about perfection, but about transformation. I'm Dr. Danny Huerta.
And I'm Rebecca St. James. Today we're talking about some of the joys and challenges parents face when adopting. And Danny, this is close to my heart because some good friends of ours are currently in the process of adoption. Wow. And they've had this little girl living with them for 6 months, and she's precious. She was 3 when she came to them, and she just brought so much joy to this family, and the 2 older sisters are really embracing their new little sister, and it's just such a beautiful thing to witness. And I do feel that it's the heart of God. He's adopted us into his family. He's called us his own, and adoption is such a beautiful thing to witness. And I love just seeing the joy in this family. And so I love that we've got a wonderful guest coming up who is going to share about how to navigate, again, the joys and the challenges of adoption.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many joys that come with it and the challenges. So I love that you shared that. I had 2 friends and a family member also that adopted, and each one very, very unique experiences. Yep. And each adopted the kids at a very young age. And 2 of them had tremendous challenges along the way, but also, it took some time to incorporate them into the family, yes, into the family system, and they've had their journey, a lot of therapy along the way, trying to navigate these big emotional outbursts, especially as they went into the teen years. And the kids were trying to process the fact that they were adopted at an early age. They were wanting to meet their family. And but I love how these 2 couples handled, as those emotions came up, they were so understanding, so compassionate. And what was neat to see is the siblings had taken these kids as their very own brother, sister, and had asked for prayer for them, love them as their own, and it was very life-changing for the friends we had in that. And then we had a family member that adopted a child, a young boy from Africa, and he's been a tremendous joy to them. I've loved seeing that, and that's Heather's cousin did that.
Oh, wow.
And they've enjoyed seeing his skills and talents come out. He's a tremendous athlete. Very loving to them. We recently visited their home and got to spend some time with their family and see their interaction, and it's so life-giving to see that. We asked them, hey, how's it gone? All these years adopting and having your other kids in the home. They said it has been amazing, and it doesn't always turn out that way. And they said that. We've been in groups where people have had tremendous challenges, and they've had some, but not quite like other families. Yeah. And so you don't want to feel guilty about that. You want to take those wins, but they have poured everything they can into this young man, and it's been fun to see. It's important to remember that when we adopt a child, it introduces them into a brand new family system, and it takes a lot of patience and a lot of time to do that. And if you have a biological children there, you want to make sure that you're preparing them for all the changes that are going to be coming, and to talk openly about those changes and have discussions once the child is in the home, talking through how's it going, how do you guys think this is going so far, and then talking about what's going well, what's not going so well. And as exciting as adoption is, we know there are going to be challenges along the way. So we've put together a list of great resources that will help you navigate the adoption process, but also post-adoption. What are these dynamics you're going to be facing? We'll put those in the show notes for you.
Thank you, Danny. Well, we've got some great segments coming up. Later, we'll hear a question from one of our listeners who wants to know how he can help his unmotivated teenager. But first, we have a great conversation with Kate Rietema about adoption. Kate is a children's book author and biological and adoptive mother of 5 girls. Let's listen to our conversation with Kate. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kate. We're really, really glad that you're here. And you have written a children's book called All the Babies that helps teach kids about adoption. What led you and your husband to adopt and just have such a heart for this?
Well, this is kind of a fun question to answer specifically here with you guys, because focus on the family was actually a really big part of
Wow.
us journeying down this road. Yeah.
It's a
So
great book.
this kind of started. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this started maybe 16 years ago. And I used to listen to Focus on the Family radio show before smartphones and podcasts. So in my kitchen, I had one of those under cabinet mounted radios, and you had to tune in at the exact time the show
Wow.
was airing. But during that time, Focus on the Family was highlighting stories of foster and adoptive families. And I was just so interested by this. I felt a real tugging on my heart about this. And at the time, I didn't really know anything about foster care. I didn't know anyone who did that. And really, I didn't even know it was a thing. I didn't understand the system that was set in place for kids who need homes. And so it was through listening to the stories that we decided to pursue what adoption, well, first, what foster care might look like for us. And I have this rule for myself that I call the 52% rule. And it's that if I feel 52% sure or more that the Lord is calling me towards something, I'm going to take a step towards it. And so it's not that I had this all figured out ahead of time or that this is exactly the way I imagined my life to look, but I was curious enough just to take that next first little step.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, 52% rule. That's I
good.
love that. That's really, how'd you come up with 52, not 53 or 51? It's that idea, right? 52.
Just a little above,
a little bit of
halfway.
That. Yeah, that's good. I love it.
Just a little bit, like, because we all want 100%, right? Like we all want to know exactly, Lord, what do you have from us? But like that's not the way he works. That's not what grows our faith. And so, yeah, sometimes I feel like just a little bit sure that maybe this is where he's leading. But I think that we have to follow those.
Yes.
Yeah, what can happen is some of your kids that are biological kids can have some interesting emotions along the way as you're anticipating this new sibling that they're going to have in the house. And I've heard a lot of different stories from families as they're trying to prepare for that. The kids don't know what to expect or what's going to end up happening once they adopt the child, and they may have fostered this child for a while, but then it creates a whole new dynamic as they adopt this child into their home. Tell us a little bit about these emotions. Let's talk about these emotions that come. What's normal to expect? How do you handle these emotions as your kids are anticipating this new child coming in?
Yeah, I definitely feel like all of the voices of the family need to be heard, that everyone needs to be able to voice their feelings, and that all of that has to be taken into consideration because it does affect the entire family. And I remember our first placement that we took, my oldest was 3 years old at the time, and we sat down with her and said that, we got a phone call and some people are looking for a family to take care of a little baby boy, and we were wondering if you know anyone who could do that. And she just lit up and she's like, well, we could do that. And so that was kind of our way, already knowing her heart, already knowing that she was excited about this journey, to just kind of include her in that kind of final decision making process. And yeah, and it's very sweet. And all kids are going to act so differently and respond so differently. We're all wired so differently.
Yes.
And so that is definitely going to be more of a challenge with some kids, and it's going to come really easily for other kids. And so we just have to know how to navigate that well. But it can be tricky for sure.
Well, your book is truly wonderful. And yes, it's an asset to any family. And we really encourage parents to buy it. The book also shares that the message that God makes the book shares that the message God gives us is that every baby and every family is different and special. And I love this particular message, to have such a heart for it, because I've done quite a lot of pro-life work and support for pregnancy centers, and a lot of children are adopted through the work of pregnancy centers, or, you know, find their family through pregnancy centers. And so I have such a heart for that. And I love that your book talks about the specialness and of every child. How have you instilled this message in your own kids? I would love to hear that.
So, for years, I've had kind of a back and forth repetition with one of my kiddos. And I will kind of, snuggle her in, or even if we're driving in the car or kind of whatever we're doing, I will just ask her, I'll say, "Who made you?" And she'll say, "God." And I'll ask, "Did he do a good job?" And she says, "Yes."
Oh, I
And I
love
said,
it.
"Is he with you?" And she says, "Yes."
Yes.
And then I say, "When is he with you?" And she'll say, "All the time."
Wow.
And so those are our 4 exchanges, our 4 question and answers. And she knows it's coming, but she loves it every time. And I think that kids love repetition, but it's also just really good for their hearts. I think that's when that truth can be buried really deep. And I'm sure that not all kids, like eventually she's going to maybe grow out of this or be sick of it. But those truths, because we've done this hundreds of times already, those truths will always, always be there.
Wow, I love that so
and I
much.
think it's just, yeah. And I think that honoring our kids' stories is really important. I think sometimes we can feel uncomfortable with the messiness of their histories or their backgrounds, but to have our kids know that we really value their history and value their story, I think that's really important. And one of the ways that we do this in our home is just verbal storytelling, of kind of retelling certain parts of her story. And she'll ask for it. The other day we were driving in the car, and my daughter says, "Mom, will you tell me a story that I already know? Tell me a story about my adoption."
Beautiful. That's precious.
It is, because she, there's comfort in that repetition. And because we can, not all parts of her story are easy, but there are parts of her story that are really beautiful. And so I think to highlight those stories for her, she understands and she sees how God has worked in all of the hard things to make something really gorgeous.
How old is she now?
She's 7 now.
Oh, how precious. And you got her when she was how old?
So we adopted her through foster care when she was 2.5.
Wow.
But she had been with us through a lot of that time. She was in one other foster home before she came to us. But we've just had the privilege of watching such a beautiful story unfold in her life.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the integration of that story for a child is just so important, for them to be able to go back and to remember, and for pieces to be put together to create a whole story, because it can be fragmented for a child that has been adopted, and they need that constant reassurance. So I love that you guys are doing that and taking the time to do it. I'm sure there have been many challenges along the way. Let's just talk about a few of those challenges that you guys have noticed in adoption, because the reality is that you're needing to develop an attachment with someone that's not your biological child. There can be challenges there. There can be trust that needs to be built along the way. And a lot of families experience challenges along the way. So I just want to provide some encouragement for families that are in the middle of some challenges there. And then we'll talk about the joys as well that you've had along the way in adopting a child. And so tell us about maybe one or two of the challenges and how you guys have overcome that.
Before my daughter came home to us, I was concerned that I would not be able to love another child as much as I was able to love my biological children. And one day I felt the Lord speak to my heart and say, um, well, let me back up. In that time, my prayer became, Lord, prepare my heart for this child. And he answered that prayer so faithfully, and we just fell in love with this little girl who came to live with us. But then a new fear came, and that was, if I'm loving this little girl so much, how am I ever going to let her go? And so that became my new fear. And in that process, the Lord told me that he had prepared my heart to take this child into our home, and that when it was time, he would also prepare my heart to let her go.
Wow.
Wow.
Man, what a promise.
Mm-hmm.
I think adoption is such a beautiful thing, and probably, emotionally impacts so many of us that admire you, Kate. And you and your husband are heroes of the faith in my mind, and it's really the heart of the gospel. It's, we were adopted into God's family. I mean, he chose us, same as you've chosen to adopt yourselves in your family. Can you speak to some of the, just, you have already, but even speak even more to just some of the joys, the incredible joys of what you have taken on as a mission, as a family with adoption?
Mm-hmm. The biggest joys that we've experienced is having God meet our needs in the middle of everything messy. That when we step out in faith, we get to experience God's nearness and his provision in a way that we couldn't otherwise.
Yes.
Yeah, and how have you seen that, Kate? When you guys, you and your husband praying along the way, it sounds like you guys have really been on this journey together, which is beautiful and fantastic. And as you've seen God's provision along the way, what has been just an example where you've seen that in this adoption story, Kate, along the way, where because that's always encouraging to see, right? To hear about
where he's
those specific moments. I'd love to hear that.
With my biological children, you have all of the parts of their story. You have the pictures from the hospital, the memories of all of the firsts. And you don't have all of that with your adopted child. And I think as a mom, I really grieved that hole. And I just kind of imagined as this child grows up, and on birthdays, we kind of have a tradition of taking out their baby boxes and looking through all of those mementos. And I didn't have the same things for all of my kids, but the Lord filled in those gaps in some really beautiful ways. And one of just the special things that the Lord did for us, I took my daughter one time to the hospital where she was born, and we went up to the delivery floor, and we had a crib card from her, which I was so happy. We didn't have any pictures. There was a lot of things we didn't have, but we had her crib card from when she was born. And so we took that up. There was a nurse. They weren't expecting us, but there was a nurse who was sitting at the desk, and it almost felt like she was waiting for us. And I introduced myself, and I introduced my daughter and why we were there. And I said that Addie was adopted, but that this is where she was born. This nurse just, had a big smile, and she looked right at my daughter, and she said, well, I'm so glad that you're here, because I was adopted too. And when I
Oh,
was a little
wow.
bit older, I was able to go and see the hospital where I was born. And so now I get to show you where you were born.
No
And
Wow.
she
way.
just, I know it was just so sweet. And
Wow.
her having that background and that understanding of how important and significant this was so precious. It was such a
Yes.
treasure. And so, just like the ways
Mm.
that the Lord provided the right people at the right time to make new memories, because we
Yes.
don't have all of the memories that I want, but that the Lord gives us these new beautiful memories,
What a
Wow.
gift.
has just been really fun. It's such a gift.
That's so profound. And I'm over here like wiping away
Yeah,
tears because
that's right.
that's just really beautiful. And what I see in that too is that God's seeing your heart as a mama and saying, daughter, I see you. I see your mama heart. And I'm not only caring for Addie, but I'm caring for you. And I just think there's such beauty in that story, the layers of it, and how seen you are as well as your daughter. So thank you for sharing that. Wow, Danny, I really loved Kate. Like you can
Yes.
just tell that she is this really loving mother
Very
who's just,
genuine.
so
Yeah.
genuine and so dedicated to being a great mom to her 5 girls. And I loved what she said about hugs per day. It made
Oh,
me
yeah.
just want to like
That's right.
hug my kids on and off all day long. I just thought
Yes.
that was really practical and
And
just,
powerful, right?
yeah.
Showing that affection.
I
Yeah.
just thought that was really, really awesome. She had a whole lot of nuggets of truth, I think, for adoptive parents, but also for any parent. I thought it was really, really valuable. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think considering the family system, I think was just important. The dynamics that we need to consider when we're thinking about adopting. It's a big decision. It can be a potentially very life-giving decision for the family, and you want to carefully consider that, but also help your kids understand what adoption is about. And that's what the book was that she authored is about. It's all the babies, and to help our kids understand what adoption is about. If they see a child that says, hey, I'm adopted, then they can understand what does that even mean. But then also as a family, as you're considering that, thinking about all the different joys that could come from that, and also realistically looking at the challenges. And I do love what she used when she said, we have a right now sister to a
It's
forever
good
sister.
language. Yeah.
It was talking about the realities of where things were at. And it's something else that stuck out to me is God meets our needs. And I know that a lot of adoptive parents, especially from my seat as a counselor, I've worked with a lot of families that have been in very difficult situations with their adopted kids, from severe sexual abuse backgrounds to severe drug use and fetal alcohol syndrome situations. And they have opened up their home to a very broken child and have poured their hearts, their lives into those children, and have still had to go to residential treatment centers and other places to get the care that this child needs that is very complex. And so as she said that, I was thinking about those families. God meets our needs. And I've seen God meet these families' needs financially because it's super expensive. Also, God meeting their needs in their marriage because it can definitely get divided in that. God meeting their needs as they're praying diligently and fervently for their child, their adopted child, as they go through all the treatment they need. And then also God meeting the needs of their kids, those biological kids, as they're learning how to live in a home that has some complexity, some challenges along the way. And so having that trust is so key as you're entering into a place that is so near and dear to God's heart.
Yeah.
To adopting a child, a broken child that has been maybe abandoned, neglected, abused, something there, or other factors that are there, but you're stepping in and saying, I want to love this child as my own. And it brings us even closer to God. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well that she said was that kids love repetition. And as we create traditions in our home with that new child, have them speak into that tradition. I was just thinking about that. If I was adopted into a home if I could speak into their family system, I begin to feel a sense of belonging. And as she was talking about those repetitions, I know it was about the repetition of doing something, but thinking about the traditions in our home and how that changes when we have an adopted child. So let's learn from what Kate said here, that we get to teach our kids about God's love through adoption, and also we get to talk ahead of time and help our kids be proactive as we're preparing to have a child come into our home.
So good, Danny. Well, we would like to offer you and your kids Kate's book, All the Babies, for a gift of any amount. You can find the link below in the show notes. Well, it's time for our weekly Q&A. This week's question comes from Matthew, who asked, "Hey, y'all. So my question is on how you parent an unmotivated kid. So my teenage daughter is high-functioning autistic and has also been diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. She has struggled to keep up in school, even with a support plan, but she usually does really well. This year, she seems to have lost all motivation, including loss of interest in future goals she used to have. She used to care a lot about her grades and getting into college, but now she lets assignments go overdue, which makes her feel overwhelmed and shut down. She doesn't wake up in the morning without me knocking on her door, and she doesn't want any help with getting organized or coming up with a plan to get back on track. She's mean to her mom and sister, but all her teachers say how nice and compassionate she is. She knows what she's doing isn't working, but she still doesn't want to try anything different. My wife and I have tried everything we can think of, and no amount of offering incentives, taking away privileges, offering homework help, talking to her about how she's impacting her future, or taking her to professional help seems to provide any external motivation. She's become the embodiment of the expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. She's only a few years away from legal adulthood, and I'm worried about her ability to survive in the real world. How do I help her when she's actively sabotaging herself?"
Wow. Matthew, fantastic question, a really tough one, and one that I really want to dive deep into with you. With high-functioning autism and with the other things that you mentioned, ADHD and especially anxiety and then depression, there's an overreactive autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic system in your daughter's response to life is overreactive, and so you're wanting to find some ways to calm it down. And I would imagine that academically she feels fine because she's probably brilliant and smart. The ADHD probably prevents her from showing that in good ways. And so what you get to do is provide her with some supports on how to help this sympathetic nervous system calm down. And one of the supplements that I've been able to have the privilege to see help clients is called Calm PRT. I've seen this consistently with some of the clients throughout the years that have the high-functioning autism. And what it specifically does is it helps calm this sympathetic nervous system down. And this particular supplement comes from Neuroscience Incorporated. There are many other supplements out there. The goal is that you're targeting this sympathetic nervous system and the glutamate neurotransmitters to calm down as the gas pedals. And see, a high-functioning autistic person is very reactive to what's around them. And so they may misread people. They may become overwhelmed with too much noise. They may become overwhelmed with just too much around them. They become reactive at that point. And for her, what's very clearly important to her are relationships. She wants to feel normal. She wants to feel accepted. She's figured out she's not. And that's the important part for her right now is she wants to have relationship and hasn't figured out how to do that. She knows academically she can do just fine and probably has lost motivation there. And so what would be really good is talking with the teachers on some ways that you guys can help her develop some of these social skills so she can calm that down, and also help her learn how to read other people, how to read their faces, how to calm down that nervous system that she has in when she's trying to relate with other people. I remember this one young man that came to my practice, and he was about to go to a residential treatment center. he was showing some really oppositional behaviors, lack of motivation, out of control. And what we found out is that he was really over-medicated. And we talked to the psychiatrist. He said, we've tried everything. We don't know what to do with this young man. And so we said, hey, talked to the parents and said, are you guys willing to talk about dietary changes, change some of that, the sugars, the gluten, the dairy? Are you willing to consider kind of the alternative side of things? Are you willing to look at the supplement side? And that's when I initially saw this CompRT supplement that naturopaths are prescribed, but you can also find it actually over the counter through Amazon and other places. And that is, I saw this young man, as they took him off the medications, address the physiological nervous system and calm it down, and the inflammation with dietary changes. Guys, I tell you, it was in Matthew. I hope this is encouragement to you. I saw transformation in this young man. He didn't go to a residential treatment center. He quickly ended his sessions with me. He had a lot of great supports around him. He had learned a lot of behavior therapy along the way. And then he actually went on to become an engineer and did a fantastic job. Brilliant young man, but he wanted that social connection. He needed some supports physiologically for his body. And what was helping him was more that natural approach. You have quite a mix here from high-functioning autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression. You're seeing all those expressed in different ways. And so it's gonna take some creativity there, some patience, but also some working with those teachers to see if there can be some teaching on that side to help calm some of these anxieties. And then with your daughter, you can call it out and say, honey, you want to be connected, don't you? And I want to come alongside you and help you with that. Because maybe what you're focusing in on are the grades and all these things. And she's going, yeah, I've done that, but it's not meeting the core need that I have, where I feel different. I feel like things are out of control. I feel things are overwhelming. And I just wish I could be normal and connected with my friends. So, Matthew, I hope this was helpful to you, my friend. And thank you for sending this question in. It sounds like it's a very tough moment for you as a dad and for you as a family. My prayer goes out to you. And actually, in fact, I want to pray for you, Matthew, as you navigate this with your daughter. And know, when you send the questions to us, we want to be prepared for that question. And I see it really as an invitation that God's giving to us here, for Rebecca and I, to be able to come alongside you in something that is difficult for you and your family. So we take these questions seriously and ponder them and want to respond with all our hearts. So, Heavenly Father, I pray for Matthew and this young woman. Lord, we know that you are... you care deeply for this young woman, and that you've designed her fearfully and wonderfully. You have intentionally woven her, and yet there are also these other things that she's navigating, and they're not outside of your understanding and knowledge. And Lord, I pray that you will equip Matthew, that you'll give him wisdom, and he and his wife, and also unity as they continue to provide specifically for this young woman and lean into what she's needing. I pray that there will be a breakthrough today, Lord. Guide them in that. And we just pray for your provision, and that you'll be at the center of this home as this young woman wrestles through some big needs. And Lord, we love you with all our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. So Matthew, thanks again for sending that question. Send us more of these types of questions, guys. We want to help you and then point you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matthew, so much for your question. And Danny, that's so great. And I love that Focus has such a wonderful counseling resource that they offer for free to people. It's amazing. And if you have a question for us, please send it in. We would love to answer it. Click the link in the show notes or go to practicemixparent.com and click the button on the side of our show page to submit a voicemail. And if your voicemail gets selected, we'll send you a signed copy of Danny's book, 7 Traits of Effective Parenting, for free as our way of saying thank you.
And we hope that this episode gave you some practical tips on how you can help your children understand the joys and challenges and beauty of adoption.
And that's just one of the reasons why we love doing this podcast, because our goal is to equip parents like you with practical tools that you can use in your everyday life with your kids. Thank you so much for listening.
I'm Dr. Danny Huerta.
And I'm Rebecca St. James. Join us next week for more tips for transforming your parenting on Practice Makes Parent.